Good morning, everyone. How are you? We'll wait one more minute and then we will get started. Hey, Amy. Hey, from Atlanta. I'm here in Las Vegas. It's good to see everyone. We're going to have a great conversation today about one of the topics that I love and hate equally, which is mental health. Hey there. Hey, the org. Hey, Munch. Thanks for inviting me. Okay, we'll go ahead and let everyone else filter in, but I love to start on time and we're a few minutes behind. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to share my screen here and then we will take it away. So today, I'm going to talk to you about mental health from a client standpoint, as well as being able to manage your own. So if you don't know me from around the way, my name is Shanta Patton-Golar. I am here in Las Vegas. I have been in the real estate industry for 20 years as of July 13th. So I'm counting ahead. I want to tell you a couple of things about me. I am 42 years old. Like I said, I've been in a business for 20 years. I am a wife, a mother of three. I have 4 doodles. I think I'm replacing them with my kids as they get older. I'm just replacing them with a doodle. I'm also a national speaker on 2 main topics, and that is housing discrimination, especially among the Black and Hispanic communities. And I am also a speaker on mental illness and mental health, which is very personal to me. My family is immersed in mental health. There are 5 of us, and all 5 of us are diagnosed and under the care of a psychiatrist, ranging from schizophrenia to bipolar depression and everything in between. So this is something that I've grown up with, and it's really important to me. And I also think that it's a circumstance where people don't want to talk about it, especially in this industry. And so we know with the ups and downs and the changes that continually come with the industry, sometimes there's not a platform for us to have conversations. And sometimes we think we just need to push it through. Like, I'll be okay, I'm just going to push through. And ultimately, push through will not work for you. So I'm here to talk about some of the things that I do when I'm managing my own mental illness and mental health, but also when I'm working with clients who also deal with those things. The more I talk about my experience and the things that I go through, it seems to be more of those type of clients feel comfortable with me. So it has become a good portion of my business now, and I want to share those things with you. So why do I speak about this? It's definitely something that is not comfortable for people to speak about, but I have learned that a part of my healing comes from transparency. And so there are quite a few people who are not comfortable with that. And so I feel as if I am speaking on behalf of those people who may not be in a position or are afraid to talk about their mental illness. So as you see here, I have posted on this particular day. I was very stressed out. And my husband took a picture of me at an event. Once I posted this, I received one of many messages similar to this one. And ultimately, what caught me was the next time when those dark clouds come, I'm going to remember your story and, God willing, show up anyway. And so it's important that we have these conversations because you never know who's watching. Now, let's talk about mental illness. It can look multiple ways, and we've learned that from seeing and hearing celebrities who we think have it all still perish because of this mental illness. And so I want to show you a picture that was taken about 30 minutes from each other. One, I had been in the bed for about 3 or 4 days, but my organization that I co-founded was receiving money from Homie and the Vegas Knights Foundation. So This to me on the right is a picture my husband took of me. And it really was impactful because I was barely making it. And so I was in the corner trying to gather whatever I possibly could to make sure that I was able to show up. So one can be the same. Just because you see this photo, I wanted to show you 30 minutes before, that was me in the corner trying to make it all work. So we have to remember that mental illness looks different from everyone. So you cannot just assume that someone around you is okay, because the majority of people we know who have committed suicide have done it while looking the happiest they've ever looked in their life. So mental illness can actually look like this too. And sometimes it gets interchanged on what mental health is and what mental illness is. And so mental health is, it can be, it's always present, but it can be positive or negative. But mental illness is not just, I feel sad, I'm stressed out. It is something that's long term. It's typically something that is also diagnosed. So keep that in mind, because sometimes it is easy to interchange those, but they are two very vastly different things. So let's talk about some of the words that you will want to avoid. Typically, it's very easy for us to classify plenty of things and people under the crazy word, crazy or insane. That's crazy. You know, I feel crazy. That person's crazy. And so you need to be very careful. So I provided some alternative words that you can use when speaking of certain people with conditions. And so if it's crazy or insane, you really want to say it's a person with mental health conditions. If it is psycho, oh, that person is psycho. Remember, there are actual people with psychosis. So even though we're comfortable saying these terms, understand there's always a better term that can be more respectful to people who are actually dealing with these things. So schizo, right? That's a person with schizophrenia. And as you can see, they all start with a person, because before you are labeled with all of these different things and categories that you might also associate yourself with, you have to understand that does not make the person, right? I am a person with mental illness, but I'm not mentally unstable, or I'm crazy, or I'm insane, or I'm psycho, or any of these things. So even though it might be a common term, that doesn't necessarily mean this today. Understand that that is where it came from. And so it's important that you understand a disabled person is not a disabled person. They're a person who happens to have a disability. Addicts typically are called junkies, but they are a person with substance use disorders. And depressed, really it's feeling down, or a person with depression. So if I feel sad, whatever, I'm just feeling down, I feel sad, I feel tired, but that does not mean you feel depression and you're depressed, because that is something that is in fact diagnosed. So keep that in mind when you're making these comments. Might not seem much to you, but if you are dealing with a client who has mental illness, you can definitely offend them in that way. Now, let's talk about stress busters. The thing about stress and the thing about mental illness is a lot of times we will not pay attention to it because it seems too simplified. I even struggled putting this together because I figured, yes, things we all know we're supposed to do and we don't do them. But sometimes the simplest steps that we don't take have the biggest outcome to us and impact. So it really is important to have quality sleep, whether you have a mental illness or you're dealing with mental, just you want to pay attention to your mental health. It really is important because sleep will determine how your day goes. Physical activity, I am definitely not under this category, although I do know that I should be. But physical activity can definitely help manage your stress. especially in this market. But it can also manage your mental illness if that is something that you are dealing with. Mindfulness practices, if you all know Tristan, you would probably say that he's a very mindful person. And he does spend a lot of time journaling and really trying to stay as peaceful as he can, given all the different hats he wears and everything. So use him as an example. As busy as he prioritizes and makes it even more important that he manages these things so that he can show up for everyone else and for himself. Balanced nutrition. It really does make a difference. Specifically, if you ever research, you will see there are certain foods you should avoid if you want to manage your stress. And there's definitely other things. Typically, somebody who has a mental illness or is dealing with it has a really hard time not stress eating or going into depressive states where they don't eat at all. Mental health care, I personally think that everyone needs a therapist because we all have some version of childhood trauma, even if we don't realize it. But it's okay to talk to somebody. And I personally love therapy because it is an outside person that will not judge me for being upset at this person, for feeling down, for having feelings that I wouldn't want anybody else to know about. So sometimes mental health is important. That can be a therapist. It can be someone within your religion, if that's something that you follow. But it really is important. And if for some reason you don't feel comfortable with even that, at least try to journal and put a place for these feelings so that they don't internally affect you mentally in your day-to-day. And also supportive relationships. My tribe is everything. My tribe is so tight and they can recognize things in me before I can even recognize it because they have made an effort to understand my mental illness and to make sure that they can support me. So if you don't have that type of support, then mental health care professionals is definitely an opportunity for you. But these are some of the stress busters. In a couple slides, I'm going to go over exactly what I do, including how I will cancel an appointment. So let's move forward. Here are some of the warning signs, and this could be warning signs for you, could be warning signs for your friends and family, could be a client, because I know I have had personally a client commit suicide during a transaction, and they actually seemed really excited to purchase their home and move forward. But you have to recognize it's easier for someone to pretend to be okay than to be okay. So here's some of the warning signs that you can look out for yourself and for other people. So feeling hopeless or helpless, experience severe mood swings, having no energy. And I know sometimes these will be affected by other things, right? I have no energy and I'm not sleeping enough, but I also have a 10-week-old golden doodle. So sometimes you'll feel like, well, I'm working a lot, or it's this or it's that. But some of these are typical. But when they all start to combine, or the majority of them start to combine, that's when you need to pay a little bit more attention. So having no energy, eating or sleeping too much, or in my case, because I have bipolar, not sleeping, right? So I can probably get a lot of things completed because I might not sleep for 3 days and then I get a lot done. But that is not something that is normal. So eating and sleeping too much, or in my case, too little, pulling away from your usual activities. I know personally, the first thing I do is I stop returning phone calls to the people who know me the most. So you have to figure out what your trigger is so that you can prepare. And one, the others in your life who really care about you can prepare and they see it, but you can also prepare yourself or look at that, if you have gotten close to your client and you are in tune to these things. Feeling numb, having unexplained aches, which I have noticed is really important, and thinking of harming yourself and others. Now, see, number 8 is where we really get deterred. because we think these are all typical things until you get to number 8. You may also think that when you get to number 8, that's the only way for you to identify, no, I'm fine. I'm just, I'm eating too much. I need to go on the diet. I don't feel like it. So I'm not going to do the things that I normally feel like. I feel hopeless only because this market is so crazy and my closings are not coming around like they normally do. I am feeling these aches because I'm 42 and now every single thing hurts. These all can be explained away besides number 8. And so a lot of people say, if I'm not number 8, then I'm fine. If I'm not number 8, then I need to push forward. But understand, mental health does not wait until you're at number 8. It can be any of these other things, and just being mentally unwell, right? Your spirit doesn't feel good. Those are all things that you should pay attention to. So you don't have to wait until number 8 in order to take time to say, hey, I don't think that I'm in a good place. Now, let's talk about your client's needs. So some of these might seem very typical to you, but then there becomes some sort of differences as we go along the way. So the first thing is when you are dealing with someone who has a mental illness, you need to figure out what their triggers are. And you need to figure out how to combat those so you can stay within your due diligence, so that you can see this to the end, so that you can get them to respond and sign forms when you need them to sign. Sometimes the fear and anxiety is what we will attribute to a flaky agent. And that's not all, or flaky client buyer, but that's not always the case. And so being able to figure out first what their communication style is, 2, what level of assistance they need, and 3, what their fears and anxiety is. So let's talk about the first one. Depending on if the person has a mental illness, you have to determine what is going to stress them out. Do they prefer text message because when they talk to you, they get very overwhelmed by information? Do they prefer you to call them because reading all that and not knowing exactly what it means stresses them out to the point where they back away from the whole thing? Is emails better because they want more information than not, and they want to be able to review it several times? Then maybe that's email. Or they are someone who needs you to do it in person so that they can answer questions or ask questions in real time, and so that they feel more like you are helping them and reassuring them. Now, I can tell you that I have made this mistake plenty of times, not recently, but I have in the past, and it has caused me to lose clients. And here's how. If you are an agent who normally texts, and because that's your mode of communication, which it is mine, I prefer it only because I like to be able to get them an answer quickly. And if I'm out showing houses or something like that, I'm not going to be on the phone talking to someone else because I'm giving my attention to this person. But so I can text quicker. I can do phone calls, but it's probably not necessarily right in the middle of the day. And I can do emails, no problem. But the issue I have is I get so many of them. Sometimes it's hard to decide which ones are important and which ones aren't. But what I will tell you is sometimes we think, well, Shante, you have to determine communication styles with anybody. Some people prefer it this way, some people don't. Yes, that is true. But here's an additional step with that. The additional step is, are they overwhelmed enough that they stop working with you? Or they're already a little shaky in the process because they just have a lot of anxiety? So you start by asking some qualifying questions, because if they want to provide you with information, they will. But you still need to be able to ascertain what type of communication I need to have with this person. So you can do that by asking qualifying qualifying questions. And one of the ones I use the most is I want to make sure I'm providing you with what you need. And then I'll give examples of kind of clients that I have. I have clients that get very overwhelmed with a lot of information at one time. And so they would prefer me to text the information or email it so they can review it in small bites, or they want the whole thing. I have clients who prefer to text because they're busy, but they want to be able to come back to it in the quickest manner that they possibly can. I also have clients who would rather me call them and walk them through the process, and whatever else. I also have clients who want to meet virtually because they still need that face-to-face, but maybe they're busy and they can't come to my office or me go to wherever they are. Which one do you resonate with? Right now, I can figure out how they want to communicate, but they're typically going to overshare during that time too. So at that point, they're going to say, well, I really have a hard time digesting everything at one time. So email probably would be easier for me. Okay, there. Now I know if I start to overwhelm them with a lot of things up front via phone calls, it's going to make them feel very overwhelmed, and I might lose that connection that I have with them. So by listening and checking for not just their communication styles, but I'm looking for fears and anxieties, then I know now I can ask some additional questions. Okay, no problem. I'll send the emails. When do you typically check your email? Because there are some deadlines that we need to get through. So when I call, is there a certain time during the day? If there's something very quick and short that I need from you, are you okay then if I text you? And then you can start determining that, like, okay, the majority of the time they want things in writing and long, or the majority of the time they want to talk over the phone. But if there was something that needed to be signed or something that needed to be addressed right then, is it then okay for me to text you only in circumstances like that? And then you'll continue to ask qualifying questions until you get enough information to feel comfortable that you know what your communication plan is going to be. Now, once you get through that, you should also be able to quickly ascertain what their level of assistance is, because you want to know, am I holding this person's hand through the whole way by explaining things and saying, I'm here with you? Do they need that type of assurance? Or am I going to do the opposite? Am I going to then overwhelm them? So I'll give you an example right now, and I'm currently in this situation, and it's going to sound kind of crazy to you, but I'm dealing with someone who also, I believe, has some of the same they have some issues that I'm not used to. And I've dealt with quite a bit of clients, but I have to make this adjustment. He definitely has a lot of fear of the unknown, but given the circumstance of how he came to me, I skipped a process and it almost caused the whole transaction to fall apart. So he seemed very quick on it. He had only wanted to communicate via text message. So that entire time, from the time he was referred to me to the time we showed up and seen one new home model, he had been very quick on email, and he only wanted to communicate like that. But the questions that he asked made me believe that he was very analytical. And so I'm thinking he wants a lot of information because he had done so much research ahead of time. So we get to the process, we get them in contract immediately with a new home, and we're good to go. So I think their new home construction, it was with Lennar. Lennar's salesperson asked me, hey, I want to talk to the client about our solar options. And so I'm like, okay, it's no problem. You're going to have more information than I do. I'll let him know that you're going to reach out and go over all his solar options. So he did. And then I got a phone call from the buyer, and he was frantically saying that he is not going to have streetlights. And I was like, what? Of course you have streetlights. So he went on to, I might have to petition the city to get streetlights. Maybe I might have to go to the homeowners association. I'm not going to feel comfortable in a community that doesn't have streetlights. And it became this, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger over about a 20-minute period of time. And I blame the fact that I didn't spend more time working through and asking qualifying questions about and ascertaining where his fears and anxiety came from. Because I figured he was analytical because he asked a lot of detailed questions and he did a lot of research on his own. But what I did not understand is he had a fear of safety. And what he got from a conversation about solar is there were no street lights. And so I had to figure out how to pull this together. I spoke to the Lennar agent and he said, no, what I told him is that you get a beautiful view here. We have a community that's up, by the mountain. And in that community, we have a strict ordinance on lights and street lights and those sort of things. So he caught the fear and he ran with it. And I should have handled that better because if I had figured out that even though he liked quick, he liked quick communication, he didn't want to talk on the phone, he didn't want to do all those things. So what ended up happening is this sales agent called him and overwhelmed him over the phone. And because I was not paying close enough attention to it, it could have ruined the whole transaction. And that was a community that he had really wanted to be in. So don't skip the processes, even though it might seem as if it's not that big of a deal. Okay. So you're going to go through your qualifying questions. Secondly, you're going to work on flexibility. And here's why. If I have a client, and we all know we've got due diligence, we have appraisal contingencies, appraisal can't get order until the buyer signs their documents. We have homeowners, so if you're in the homeowner association, we have homeowner association deadlines. There are deadlines everywhere, but how do you handle these deadlines if your client is overwhelmed or they have a fear that hasn't been managed by you yet? They have all these different things. So one of the ways that I go with that, one, you have to be flexible. Sometimes what you're trying to communicate to them they will not perceive it as something that is supportive to them. They will sometimes feel as if you're just trying to make money off of them. So you have to slow the process down. I do that via visual and written guides. So with my buyer guides, it's whatever you typically think of. I used to use the ones from Keeping Current Matters, and then I created my own that I purchased off of Etsy. But in my buyer guides, there is a link to each of the sections, and that link is a video. It's a very short video of me describing and giving real life scenarios to each one of those categories in my buyer's guide. The reason why that is important is because I need to give them the information in multiple communication styles up front so that I can prepare them ahead of time. That way, if I have a client who just will not move quickly because they have to work through their fear every time, what I need to do is be able to get the information to them as quickly as I can before the deadline. So here's an example. I will have a video on due diligence. Now, there's the guide, and the guide goes over due diligence and all of those things. Now, if there's someone that likes to really absorb that information, then a guide is going to work well for them, right? Each of these sections. But if they are someone who still needs the information, but their communication style comes with a high level of fear and anxiety, then I want them to start seeing my face and hearing me explain each section of the process for them. So now you're able to read it. If you have more questions, you can then click on it. That might help you go back. If we are now past due diligence and we're just waiting for the homeowners association docs, or we're in due diligence. Now we need to negotiate repairs and how will we handle when the inspection is done, those things. So I have it written and now I'm following it up with the video, but I want it to be less work for me. So they're all pre-done. And I want it to be easily accessible to them so that they can get it when they want to receive that information. So there's a link, and the link is for each of the sections, and it explains everything. And they're about 2 minutes. 2 minutes for us, if you do a lot of video, 2 minutes is a long time. But for them, if they need to replay it, they can. If there's someone where they really still just want you to get to the point, the video isn't very long. And if there's someone who really wants to sit, analyze, and absorb it, they now have it in video, and they also now have it in a written form. That's ahead of time. When I meet them or when we start going through the process, I am going to personally walk them through it, but I'm setting up some additional safeguards for them to ensure that they are still getting that information. If you're overwhelmed, I'm not giving it to you, in this capacity. I'm giving it to you in a book, but that guide is broken down into sections, and it has an accompanying video with it. So that's one of the strategies. I use a lot of visual and written to prepare them ahead of time for it. I make sure that my buyer's guide also includes a copy of the forms that they will be going over. So the offer, our wire disclosure, some of the other disclosures that EXP has. But I put those in there in a flip book type process only because I love the shh, that's just me. But I put them in a version like that because contracts can be fearful for anyone. But for them, they want to have a level of trust that you know what you're talking about. But I also want them to have questions that I can answer, and I want them to talk about that and walk through it ahead of time. So my buyer's guide also includes a link to the documents that they should become familiar with. That way, when it's time to sign an offer, remember, these are the documents that we review. You had questions about this and this. Now we have the answer for that. The only thing that is going to change in here is we're putting our actual offer terms in. So that here's the sales price, your financing type, how long we're going to ask for due diligence. I explained due diligence to you before. Are there any additional questions that you might have about that now? No, typically it's no, because they've read it or they've watched it, or I've had that conversation with them too already. So they've been hit 3 times, right? I've personally talked to them. They've been able to read it. They've been able to watch the video and anything in between. So I'm making sure that they have all these things ahead of time to try to help mitigate any delays that I might have. I also try to let them know, hey, we're going to look at homes on Friday. Just a reminder, this is what this is going to look like. If at that time you want to make an offer and we get that accepted, remember, we will have this amount of time for you to wire your funds, and we'll have this amount of time and we'll get our inspections done and our repair requests. And remember, we talked about that. Now I'm basically saying this is what to expect next week. Then when that comes, here's what to expect next time, our next week. These are our deadlines. Don't worry about any of these deadlines because that's why I'm here to manage these things. So I just want you to worry about these things. Just remember, this is what's coming up next. And typically by doing that, I can work through a lot of what will stop them from moving forward. Now, let's not get past the fact that we will have buyers who are in fact flaky. They're here, they're there, they might be working with multiple agents, whatever that might be. But in most cases, these buyers are not flaky, but they do take an additional conversation, an additional way for them to get information, right? They just need a little bit more, which I personally think we should be providing to all of our clients, but they just need an additional step to help mitigate their fears and anxiety and what their level of assistance is, because you can overwhelm them and now they no longer have that connection with you. So if you have questions about that, drop them in the chat and we can circle back around to those. But this is typically my plan. If I can get these things done, then I'm good to go. I can work them through the process because I know I just need to make sure that they understand what that next step is. And then after that, they understand what that next step is. I don't want them thinking about the full process because that might overwhelm them. Or in the other sense, they need to know about the full process. So I'm going to say, I have a little textable that says, this is where we are in the process. You're in step number 4 or whatever it is. So I also use those, even if they're not somebody who wants to communicate everything via text, I can at least show them that part, because once they're in contract, I say, I can show you. It says you're in number 4, or right now you're in step number 2. And step number 2 is discussing your criteria, touring listings, and adjusting criteria if needed. Then your step 3, offers negotiation. We're going to research your comps, submit the offer to the seller, negotiate and sign contracts. So I've broken it down into 6 strategies or 6 sections: pre-approval, home shopping, offers and negotiation, due diligence, pre-closing and title, and closing. That way, okay, now we've gotten this part done. Now we are in number 2. Now we are in number 5. And that helps them because they're like, okay, got it. And I think at some point in time, if I can figure it out, I will put a link to each of those videos on this textable so that they know, okay, I'm in number 5, and they could click on it and see the video of me saying, hey, you're in step 5 now, and these are the things that we can go over. So maybe that's actually something that I might do, because I can pre-record them, save them to my phone, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, 5, and 6, and then I'll be able to send those over. So thank you. I think I'll do that. The more that you can pre-plan it, it saves time for you, but it also gives you the time to honor and respect how they're feeling and what they need in order to become a homeowner. Okay, now let's talk about my plan and what I do. And this is going to be difficult for some people, okay? But first, one of the things Denzel Washington said is, don't confuse movement with progress, because you can run in place. And that has really stuck with me over the years, because sometimes you do think, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, oh, I'm so busy. But is your busy matching up with your closings, or are you just busy, right? And sometimes we do a lot of busy work. And one of those busy works, I consider, at least for me, is going out to lunch. Can I take you out to lunch and pick your brain? Can I take you out to lunch? I really love to work with you. I want to invite you here and this and that. I'm very particular about my schedule, because my schedule is set in stone, but my mental health might be all over the place. And so I need to make sure that I'm getting the important things done. And I'm clear, my son, I'm clear about the things that matter the most. So you're not going to like this. If you are someone who is uncomfortable with confrontation, if you don't like the feeling that you might have disappointed someone, this will be very difficult for you. And what I'm talking about is the power of yes. And here's why the power of yes is what I call the power of yes. Typically, people will say, this is the year of the no. I'm going to say no to everything. But one of the things that we do know about human brains and emotions is the fact that the word no is such a negative feeling to your body, right? It gives you anxiety just thinking that you have to tell somebody else no. And so I have changed my no into a yes, because yes makes me feel empowered. Yes makes me understand that my well-being, my time, whatever my plans and priorities are first. And so I use the power of yes. And over here to the left is my power of yes. I'm telling yes to myself and no to everyone else, because there's only black and white. There's a yes and there's a no, but there's a balance. If you say no to this, you're saying yes to something else. Or if you're saying yes to this, you're saying no to something or someone else. And that might not seem like a big deal, maybe, but it is to me. I have a little boy. Well, I want to call him a little boy, but he's 12 now. And sometimes you don't pay attention to your kids, what they feel, what they hear, what they perceive. And I always consider myself to be someone who was in tune with my kids. But I am also that person that wants to do that one last thing. I'm going to check this email. I'm going to send this last email. I'm going to do this one last thing. Then I'm going to go pick my child up. And one day I got there and he told me, Mom, why are you the last person in the line? Why do I have to wait to the last minute? What's the reason? And I have those kind of kids. We have very open communication. And I had to apologize because I had no reason. I had no reason at all. And he helped me understand my priorities, because he would say things when they learned about what is important, what's not important. He would say things like, Mom, what you're doing is not more important than spending time with me. And it really stuck with me. And from that moment on, I had to make decisions. And I started doing a couple of things. One, I used to work, although last night I did work till 1:45, and, hats off to other agents, because the agent and I were trying to make a transaction work. But I had to stop saying no to him. So in my mind as an adult, would you rather say no to some random other people, or do you want to say no to your friends, your family, your mental health, your everything? How many times can you tell yourself no before it physically and mentally starts to break you down? And that's the decision that I had to make. In the wise words of, at that time, he was about 8, that said, this is whatever you're doing is not more important than spending time with me, than picking me up so I'm not the last kid. And to this day, I leave 30 minutes ahead of time, and I am always one of 5 cars in the line. And I have made that commitment to him, and I'll never be that, what I considered a hot mess. That's just an excuse. You need to make your priorities priority. So in order to do that, I have to manage my schedule. And sometimes out of guilt, we will say, okay, we'll go. Maybe someone's been calling you forever and you just want to get it over with. So they don't call you anymore, but you don't want to tell them no. Here is my get out of jail free card. And some people might say, well, you're committed to it and this and that. You're right. And I'll learn to stop committing to things that have no interest for me. I will learn to stop committing to things that I know have no value and are in no way working me through my priorities. I know what's important to me and I have it written down. If it does not fall under that category, it's going to be a no. But if I did not say no ahead of time, this is what I do. And I check this under my calendar reevaluate on Friday. I look on my calendar and I look to say, Shanta, does these appointments that you have next week align with these 5 things that are a priority to you this year? And if it's a no, this is what I give them. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate the interest in helping me with my business or whatever it is they're trying to help you with. Unfortunately, you call me at a very busy time, professionally and personally, and I am able to commit. You don't have to tell them why. You don't need to give them more. You are a whole adult and you don't have to do this. This is how I'm managing my time, my stress, and my mental health. Feel free to snap a picture of that. Everyone gets it, especially loan officers and escrow officers. And I know that sounds terrible, but they're typically the ones that want to fill up your time. And if it can't fall into those 5 things that are most important to me personally and professionally, then I can't do it. And this is the message. Everyone gets the same as equal opportunity. This is the message that I will submit. And so keep that in mind. So I time and I color block. I can have something against the wall over there in the calendar, and I can tell you if I'm going to make money this month or not, based on the colors, right? If it's purple, I know that's my personal, it's my favorite color. That's my personal time. If I'm looking and it's purple, then I know I've taken care of myself, right? If it's purple, it's also time I'm spending with my family. If there's a lot of blue, which is my volunteer work, these other real estate organizations and committees and board positions and all of that stuff, if that's there and it's blue everywhere, I've lost all my balance. And now I need to recalibrate and take my time back. And so I'm constantly looking, I'm visual with that. So I'm constantly looking and saying, is this making sense to me? Does this align? The colors should be the way they're supposed to be. And if not, it's because you have either said yes too many times to things that should be no, or I've stopped putting myself as priority. So you have to keep that in mind. So that's my power of yes. That's my time blocking and my calendar reevaluation on Fridays. I don't work my schedule on Sunday night because I need to be much more prepared than that. So I reevaluate what I'm going to do next week on Friday to make sure it's still in line with what is priority to me. The one thing, and I actually got this from Tristan, who's a good friend and mentor of mine. There are days where I can't get that schedule done. I probably can only sit at my desk for 30 minutes, and that was an accomplishment for me. Tristan always says, if that's the case, do that one thing that can move your business forward, right? That's it. You might not do these things, those things, any of the stuff over here. But if there is one thing that you can do that will move your business forward, do that one thing, and then you can give yourself permission to go back to sleep or whatever that looks like. But do that one thing. And sometimes that one thing was, I can only do the one thing every day that week, but it still kept moving forward with the goal. So be okay with worst case scenario. You just do that one thing. That's all. Eat the frog. Sometimes that one thing is eating the frog. If you guys have ever read that book, it's like getting done the most important, the most challenging thing that you have to get done. Stop waiting to the last minute to do it and just eat the frog and take care of it first thing in the morning or whatever your mornings look like. My mornings are more like 10 o'clock. And so making sure those things are done. Okay. Now, MAD is free, and you can't see my podcast site, but I have a big sign that says MAD is free. And it has been a term that I've used almost my whole teenage adult life. And here's what it means. There are a lot of emotions that as humans we share with other people. Whether that is, if someone cries, you're probably likely to cry too, especially if you're an empath, because you just feel that emotion with somebody. If someone is excited, you probably would also feed off that energy and be excited too. But being mad and being angry and absorbing that because somebody else is mad and angry is not a shared emotion. Just because somebody else is mad does not mean you have to be mad. And sometimes when you tell people no, they get upset. And so I always remind myself and other people around me that mad is free. Somebody else being upset doesn't affect me. I don't have to absorb that energy. Whatever they're mad about, they can be mad on their own. It's a get out of jail free. You can go do whatever you want to do, but that does not mean that I have to follow suit. And once you start to realize that mad is free and I don't have to match that type of energy unless you're petty like me, but you don't have to. I could choose not to be petty on certain days. So you have to make sure that these things are important. So this person can be really mad if I cancel on them. Mad is free. But you know what else you get to do? Have balance, get your priorities done, stay focused on what's important, and show up where you're supposed to show up for the things that really matter to you. So keep in mind, that is free. Also, I have a Peaceful Profit. It is a podcast that will launch at the end of the month. It is specifically on things like this, which is prioritizing your mental health while getting the bag. So if you don't know that terminology, is being mentally healthy while also being a top producer. What does that look like? What are steps? So a little bit of what I've talked about, those are things that get broken down, like imposter syndrome, working through trauma, which I think is what people feel when transactions close and you really were prepared and you've already counted the money and all the things that are associated. I use that platform to work through my own mental, health, because it's an outlet to talk about things that I feel like no one else wants to talk about. So feel free when I give you my code, my scan code, that's where you'll be able to link to it. It'll be available this at the end of the month. So don't confuse movement with progress, because you can run in place. Don't confuse being busy and you're out all day and people want to pick your brain and they want to do all these things. That does not mean that you are busy with the correct things. Also, let me give you a tip before I get done on people picking your brain. Start charging them. Because one thing that I know, even if it's $20, $50, they can go to Calendly, you can set it up, they can pay. Because one thing that I know, people love to pick your brain for free. But if they truly valued it, they would pay to block out time, because time is money and your hours mean something, right? They account for something, whether you're getting paid $100 an hour, $300 an hour, $10 an hour in some cases, your time is worth it. So if they want to pick your brain 10 or 15 minutes, which really means 45 minutes, you know how you get rid of those people, or at least weed through the people who are going to waste your time? Charge them. $20, $30, whatever that looks like. And the people who truly value what you're going to say, and they understand that whatever it is they're offering or asking for, you participating or giving advice is worth something, then charge them. Now, here's your key takeaways. The power of yes. Doing a daily check-in with yourself to understand, how am I feeling? What are my triggers? Am I doing okay? Am I showing up the way that I'm supposed to show up? Get enough sleep, have a plan. So this is my default plan, right? I'm not feeling well. I just can't show up the way that I need to show up. Okay, what is that one thing? And I will also bring that back to, there's a fine line between taking care of your mental health and being lazy. And only you can figure out what that is. So it very well could be that you're unmotivated. You're probably wanting to do the bare minimum. You were in the market where the houses were flying off, off the MLS. And so life was easy for you. And now it's not that way. You're probably not dealing with a mental health crisis. You're probably just lazy, or there's something else. So give yourself that time to have that one thing, but the one thing can't be every day and for a month, because that's not conducive with being a business owner. And also make sure that no matter what you do, you have to determine what the communication style is of your client, or you could lose the entire thing. There's my contact information. I hope that this was very valuable to you guys, and take those tips, do the video or whatever it is you feel comfortable with, prepare them, so that you can stay within your time frame and you get the most out of the transaction, and they will then refer quite a few people to you, because they know that you had the patience and guidance to walk them through the transaction. All right, thank you. Now, if there's any questions, feel free to come off of mute, or I will check here. Good morning, everyone. Okay. I'm an emotional empath too, Amy, and it's probably one of the hardest things to ever deal with, is when you're absorbing everyone. So a lot of times I won't go somewhere just because I'm not in a place where I can go and not, absorb everybody's emotions. Okay, I will put these 3 minutes back into your schedule. If you love this conversation, you want to have more conversations like this, let us know, and the team will schedule some of this so that we can continue to be successful and represent everyone that needs to be represented. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.